Today is a gorgeous Friday, July 23rd, 2021. I'm at Port Jefferson, getting ready to catch a boat over to Connecticut, do a little rail fanning around New Haven today. Beautiful day for a ferry boat ride over to Bridgeport. And this is my conveyance over the Long Island Sound, the Park City Ferry. Ferries run during the summer, every hour on the hour out of here to Bridgeport. Sailing time is about an hour and 10 minutes. One of several mammoth vessels the Port Jefferson Bridgeport Ferry has. When you're going from Bridgeport, Connecticut to Port Jefferson, it's faster because the boat pulls out of Bridgeport and pulls into Port Jefferson, and the cars can unload right away. Going the other way, it has to back out of here and back into Bridgeport. That takes extra time. This is how you get from Long Island to Connecticut without going into New York City. This and the Orient Point New London ferry. There was talk years ago of having high-speed ferries from Shoreham to New Haven, and also the bridge across the Sound from Bayville to Rye, but nothing of that nature has ever been started. This is the way to go for now. Okay, I'm on the top deck of the ferry now, waiting to leave. Get a nice sweeping panorama of this beautiful harbor in Port Jefferson. Gorgeous day. There's Danford's Inn, very popular accommodation and restaurant here in Port Jefferson. Okay, we're out on the Long Island Sound now. Just left Port Jefferson, and what a beautiful day this is. Visibility is excellent. You can see the Connecticut coastline very easily, and I can even see distant smokestacks, which are located around Eaton's Neck, north of Northport. And coming into view, you can see one of our ferry counterparts. He'll be arriving in Port Jefferson shortly. He'll be going out as the next boat at 11 a.m. Last time I took this ferry was last August. If you remember my New Haven video that I shot, it was kind of a cloudy, stuffy day. And I'll never forget the ferry boat ride up here. As we got closer to Connecticut, we ran into a real bad thunderstorm. Oh, it was awful. Lightning bolts flashing all over the place. Still raining when we got into Bridgeport, but as I caught the train to New Haven out of Bridgeport, New Haven is actually further north in latitude than Bridgeport is, and that system was hugging the coastline, so I got out of it. The ferry boat you're looking at is the P.T. Barnum, one of 3 vessels operating today. The other one is the Grand Republic. We're on the Park City. And there's the P.T. Barnum, about to approach Port Jeff Harbor. You see that tall building in the background? That's Stony Brook Hospital, Stony Brook University Hospital, one of the largest hospitals on Long Island.
Ella, go stand next to your brother. Go stand over here. Turn around.
Getting closer to the Connecticut coastline now. There's the 3rd vessel running today, the Grand Republic. All 3 boats look pretty much alike. of the boat, you can see smokestacks. That's a power plant just north of Northport Village, around Asheroken, on the road heading to Eaton's Neck on Long Island. Riding on this boat reminds me of a joke I heard where one of the boat's crew was riding with the captain on a boat, and he says to the captain, I want to go downstairs and take a rest. And the captain got real mad at him and said, downstairs? You don't say downstairs on a boat, you say below. And when you go into the right of the boat, you go to starboard. And when you go to the left of the boat, you go to port. And if I hear you talking stupidly like that again, I'm going to pick you up and throw you through that round window. Yeah, a little over an hour from sailing out of Port Chef, we're coming into Bridgeport Harbor. Smokestack is a landmark for mariners. If you're using visual boating rules, or VBR, I don't know if there's such a term. I know VFR is for flying, but that's a reference point for mariners. Tells you where Bridgeport is. That's Smokestack. Bridgeport, Connecticut is the largest city in the state of Connecticut. And right near the ferry dock, there's a short walk, is the Amtrak Metro North station at Bridgeport. Well, we made it. Wonderful ride. Wonderful ride. Heading for the train station. Well, we're now on the Metro North station at Bridgeport. It's 11:35 a.m. Approaching westbound is Amtrak 2159 en route from Boston to Washington, Acela Express. These trains operate on Metro North between New Haven and New Rochelle, and they don't break any speed records on this section of track. Since early this week, Amtrak has pretty much reinstituted a pre-pandemic schedule, a full schedule on this line. Well, that train is definitely not achieving its speedy potential through here. I might add, Amtrak has reinstituted a full schedule, pre-pandemic schedule pretty much through here, including the Vermonters. They now operate between Washington and St. Albans, Vermont. The Vermont service was reinstituted this past Monday, July 19th, and we'll get to see both of those trains today. Well, I just arrived in New Haven, and here's one of the gems you can find here. This CTRail GP40 PH2, I believe, made in a Coca-Cola Zero paint scheme. Sounds good. We'll be leaving on a later trip. Here's a better sun angle of that beautiful engine. And here's Shoreline East 3618 departing for New London. former Amtrak P40. Those things look tired and shabby, but they're going to be repainted and rebuilt into that Coca-Cola Zero scheme like the Jeep I just showed you. There's CTRail train 4406 departing for Springfield, Mass. Another tired P40, 840. They don't look nearly as good as these things. Well, arriving at 12:39 is Amtrak 172 en route from Washington to Boston. He'll stop here for a few minutes for a crew change. There are no through New York-Boston crews. ACS 64 and number 669. I remember this locomotive when I took a trip to Philadelphia late March. I had this locomotive both to and from Philadelphia out of New York. You can see they have two sets of horns, one in use for each direction. And off he goes to Boston. He's about to enter what I consider my favorite part of the Northeast Corridor, the New Haven to Boston stretch. Has the highest speeds, track is probably in the best condition, constant tension catenary, some scenic views. I'd love to rail fan that line on a trackside perspective. Here's the interior of New Haven Union Station, and it is a Union Station served by multiple passenger carriers, Amtrak, Metro North, CTRail, and Shoreline East. This beautiful structure was built in 1918. There's a lot of business with students for Yale University nearby. And here comes Amtrak 2163 from Boston to Washington at 1:12.
Please be advised that the next train departing on track 14 is the Metro North train 6535 to Grand Central Terminal, scheduled to depart at 1:18 p.m.
And he's stopping for a crew change. He'll pick up a crew here for New York. And he negotiated a couple of 150-mile-an-hour stretches on his run down from Boston. One around Mansfield, Massachusetts, and another one that goes through Wickford Junction, Rhode Island. And arriving at 1:14 is train 56, the Vermonter, from Washington, D.C. to St. Albans, Vermont. Vermont service is back. And with that, we'll see an engine change from electric to diesel. He's double-headed. And there goes 2163 for Washington, D.C. Due out of here 1:15. That's a lot of horsepower pulling that train. Over 17,000. This train is scheduled to stop here for 19 minutes. He's due out of here at 1:30. He'll be heading up to St. Albans via Hartford, Springfield, Mass, Northampton, Mass, Brattleboro, Vermont, White River Junction, and on up to St. Albans. I would imagine one of those ACS 64s were isolated. That's a lot of horsepower to pull on this train. It's trying to unhook the engine. I don't know where the diesel is that's going to take its place from here to St. Albans. Now, these look like the car knockers to disconnect the engine. Here comes the P42 that will take over the train leaving here. P42 number 85. They got to cut the head end power from the locomotives, disconnect the MU cables. Well, he's got the jumper cables that provide a connection from the locomotive's hep to the lighting and air conditioning in the cars. Right now they're dark. Meanwhile, the diesel's in position, waiting for these electrics to clear so he can back onto the consist. Very slow process. Back in the Pennsylvania Railroad days, the Broadway Limited used to change locomotives in Harrisburg, and they were allotted 6 minutes for that engine change. And they met that 6 minutes. .132, that was train 473 arriving from Springfield. He terminates here. And like the Keystone trains, it has those Metroliner cab cars. They run strictly a push-pull operation on that line. And here comes the P42. He's already 3 minutes late out of here. Come the electrics heading back to the pit. And as the diesel was backing up to the Vermonter, train 173 caught me a little by surprise. It's arrived on time at 1:35 en route from Boston to Washington. And he's off for his crawl to New York. Metro North track is not very fast. This is a busy time for Amtrak trains. Arriving at 1:40 is train 2158, Acela Express from Washington to Boston. Judging by the positioning of this train in 56, I would think the Acela would get the railroad first. And 56 is only now beginning to pump up his air. His HEP is on. 56 looks like he's ready to go. And 56 is out of here 1:44, 14 minutes late. Very long stop. 2158 is leaving for his dash to Boston. Finally, 56 is on his way, heading up north to Vermont. It's great to see this Vermont service back again. The Ethan Allen Express out of Penn Station to Rutland is also running as of July 19th. And looking to the northwest, you can see the motor storage yard. You can see a Metroliner cab car set of equipment for a Springfield run, a P42, looks like there's an SW 1500 Amtrak painted in the background. Several ACS 64s here. They pretty much detached those here for the Springfield and Vermonter services. Other than that, they run through to Boston. And there's the outside of the classic New Haven Union Station building. Years ago, that was the headquarters for the New York, New Haven, and Hartford Railroad. And the time is 2:10. Approaching New Haven Station is train 86, en route from Washington to Boston. Coming out of the yard, we have some Metro North Kawasaki M8 cars coming into the station to make the next departure for Grand Central. The Kawasaki M8s, Metro North engineers' favorite locomotive to operate. You'll note the trailer car there. During the pandemic, they didn't operate the trailers. These cars are more or less precursors to the M9 cars that the Long Island Railroad has. When I say that the M8s are Metro North engineers' favorite locomotives or MU cars to run, I say that half in jest. Some people may like them, some people may not. I know at least one person who does not. Then we have CTRail equipment with the GP40 PH2. It's pulling into the track here. It's going to be going out at 326 for Hartford. These things have really interesting sounding horns. Rather discordant sound. The passenger equipment you see on the CTRail and Shoreline East trains formerly ran on Virginia Railway Express before they got their double-decker cars. Oh, here's a place I've never actually been to. The State Street Station in New Haven, right downtown. It was built in 2002 and a second platform was added in 2018. And here we are at track level at the State Street Station. It's a busy place. A lot of trains pass through here. I'm standing on the new platform that was built in 2018. That platform over there came first in 2002. We're about 0.8 of a mile east of New Haven Union Station. And this sees a lot of activity. In addition to your Amtrak trains to and from Boston, this is also like New Haven Union Station. You could call it State Street Union Station, because trains of Shoreline East, Old Saybrook and New London, as well as CTRail and Springfield Amtrak service stop here. Metro North also serves this station, heading west, but there are no Metro North services at this time. And at State Street at 326, we have a Shoreline East train from New London to New Haven arriving, with a tired P40 on the point. train 1673, New London to New Haven, Shoreline East train. And as 1673 leaves for New Haven, just a hop, skip, and a jump from here. Approaching now is CTrail, train 4458, from New Haven to Hartford. And he'll have a Jeep shoving on the rear. Sounds an awful lot like a Metro North cab car. CTrail has a few of these, but not nearly as many as New Jersey Transit has. He'll head over to Mill River Interlocking east of here, where he'll enter the Springfield line and head up to Hartford. And approaching eastbound at 345 is train 174 from Amtrak, en route from Newport News, Virginia to Boston. We'll be going right on by here, State Street. Pretty soon he'll be at Mill River Interlocking and he'll be heading down the shoreline. Here comes 2169 from Boston to Washington. He's in good shape. He's due out of New Haven at 4:09. I got 3:59. He leaves Boston at 2 o'clock. That's a fast run. I think this is train 474 bound for Springfield, Amtrak. Adios. Yep, that was Amtrak 474 bound for Springfield with a friendly engineer. Well, this is CTrail 4407. He had already arrived here from Springfield. I was at State Street. I was going to ride him to here. You can travel free from State Street to Union Station, but he never showed up. I didn't know where he was. So I walked back and he wound up beating me here. Looks like next door there's a load of Metro North ballast cars parked over there. While I was at State Street, I saw a Metro North G35R. Looking to the west, it's 4:29 p.m. You see that ACS 64 all lit up. He's waiting in position for the Vermonter to arrive shortly. Train 55 from St. Albans to Washington. He will back on and replace the P42 that's cut off. And around the same time, we'll have Amtrak 137 from Boston to Washington stopping here. So this is a busy time for Amtrak. The Vermonter is actually about 25 minutes late right now. And here comes train 137 arriving from Boston at 4:31. It's a couple of minutes late. Have a crew change here. Amtrak ACS 64 number 657. And it looks like it's been through the war a little bit. The front is loaded with insects and it's kind of dirty, but these engines are sleek, very powerful, 8,600 horsepower. I like the looks of them. Whether or not they'll replace the AEM 7s for longevity, well, time will tell, but they are impressive, sleek looking locomotives. And I really enjoy the paint scheme and the horns on these things. Whether they'll replace the GG1s or not, well, I don't think anything will. I love the sound of those when they start up. Electronic power in its purest form. You can see the car knockers down there. They're preparing for the arrival of the Vermonter, getting ready to do another engine swap. And at 4:37, arriving here at New Haven is the Vermonter from St. Albans, Vermont to Washington, train 55. Great to see this train. When I was here last summer, the Vermonter only terminated at New Haven. You could have called it the Connecticuter, not the Vermonter. P42 104 is done for the day after coming down from St. Albans, Vermont. They got to cut the head end power, disconnect the cables, hoses, and away it goes to the pit. He's allotted like over almost 20 minutes for this engine change here. He's really stretching it, in my opinion. I used to know a Pennsylvania Railroad employee, and he used to talk about the Broadway Limited. That was their fastest train from New York to Chicago. It was really the holiest of holies on the Pennsy. And that train came into Harrisburg from New York with a GG1. Train stopped. There were car knockers standing by, ready to swarm around the coupler of that GG1. And they unhooked the hoses real fast, pulled the pin, and that GG1 took off for the storage yard. Harris Tower threw the switch, and the E8 diesel engines backed onto the consist real quick, and they hooked up the hoses, and it was ready to depart in 6 minutes. Granted, in those days, they didn't have to deal with head-end power, but I think with the head-end power, that's an extra step you have to take, hooking up the cable and getting the HEP started. But if you hustle, I don't see why you can't do it in about maybe 8 or no more than 9 minutes. And the passengers on board the train get a chance to stretch their legs here with this long station stop. And then soon, once he's hooked up, the electric locomotive will be off on his dash to DC. Engine changes in New Haven are nothing new. Back in New Haven days, they used to swap out electrics for diesels here. The FL9s kind of negated that for a while, but when the Penn Central era occurred, the FL9s pretty much disappeared from the through Boston trains. They pretty much ran with GG1s out of New York to here, and then E units to Boston and Springfield, and GP9s also. So lots of engine changes occurred. Now the only ones that occur are on the Vermonter and the Washington Springfield trains. Hurry up and wait. Seems like he's all ready to go. He'll be chasing 137 of Washington. I had hoped to see the veterans unit today, number 642, but nope, not so lucky. Okay, everybody's getting on now. Smoke break over. These electric locomotives, like steam locomotives, breathe like living creatures. Okay, he's getting a highball now. All aboard. No, not quite. He's due out of here at 4:39. It's 4:52 now. These things sound like hybrid automobiles. Sound like they're shutting off and then they come to life. What's the problem? And you witnessed the Vermonter shows here at New Haven. The train left with a few hiccups. We see Amtrak B42-104 that just came off the Vermonter. Just went around the balloon track. Now he's facing east. Here's Amtrak 176 arriving, headed to Boston. 512. But this takes priority. Metro North GP35R. Yeah, 104 is probably going to head into the pit now. Had to do a lot of shuffling and dipsy-doodling in this yard. And here's a set of M8s coming in. Going to take this back to Bridgeport. A very entertaining afternoon here in New Haven. We just got off the train at Bridgeport, watch them leave, and then scoot over to the ferry. An exuberant conductor on board. Yeah, the ferry's just a short walk from here. All right, here we are. Walk-on passengers and cars are loading. Departs at 6 o'clock. The ride back is faster. He pulls right out, and when he gets to Port Jeff, he pulls right in. No turns. I got 5:54. So hopefully we'll get out on time. Train station is right there past that US Interstate 95 overpass. Just a short walk. In fact, there's a New Haven bound train sitting in there right now. I tell you, rail fanning is great, but it's kind of extra special to throw in a boat ride. Yeah, that highway bridge spanning the rivers Interstate 95. Used to be the Connecticut Turnpike. Used to have tolls on it every few miles. You had to stop and throw a quarter in. Drove people crazy. Finally, they abolished the tolls altogether. Now it's a freeway across Connecticut. And this red car looks like the last one to board. A couple of stragglers. It's 6 o'clock right now. They just made it. Either they got caught in traffic or they're just naturally tardy people. I know a lot of people like that. Oh, a couple of more. Come on, it's 6:02. Let's go. You're late, too bad. Come on, let's go. And we're off. That one car is really precariously placed on this boat. Connecticut. Oh, that cost a few bucks. It's been a gorgeous day today. Warm, not terribly humid, very tolerable to be outdoors, unlike the last several days. Alright, like the trip up, we're on board the Park City Ferry once again. And we're just about to leave the Bridgeport Harbor on what has turned out for a magnificent evening of sailing. Well, it's Friday night. People are traveling away for the weekend. Boaters are out in force. We leave the Bridgeport Harbor and we head out across the Long Island Sound. And you can see the Bridgeport smokestack receding in the distance. On a clear day like this, that's a very good landmark for boaters to find where Bridgeport Harbor is. Good old P.T. Barnum. Grand Republic should be the next ferry we see before we get to Port Jeff. Yeah, we're out in the middle of the Long Island Sound now. I believe the distance in statute miles from Bridgeport to Port Jeff on the ferry is about 18 miles. From New Haven to Shoreham or Wading River, further east, that's about 22 miles. It's about the widest part of the Long Island Sound there. It gets narrower the closer you get to New York City. For you folks interested in aquatics, the Long Island Sound has a depth that ranges from about 65 feet to 230 feet, but the average depth is about 65 feet. They say if you put the Statue of Liberty down into the middle of the Long Island Sound, there would be 86 feet of it exposed above the water. Interesting. That's a nice door. Wow. Nice coat. Here's the star Just leaving Port Jeff Harbor is the Grand Republic, the third vessel. Vessels came in here to deliver coal. I think it's natural gas now. Shops and restaurants, beautiful marinas, some inns, great place to hang out in the summertime. On top of the hill you can see St. Charles Hospital around 10 o'clock. As you can see, the only way out of Port Jefferson is up. The nearest town to the south is Port Jefferson Station.
Please, all drivers of cars and passengers and vehicles, return to your vehicles at this time. All walk-on passengers will be disembarking from the rear of the vessel. Passengers needing assistance, please notify a crew member. Please do not stand in any stairwells while the vessel is docking. Once again, all drivers of cars and passengers and vehicles, return to your vehicles at this time. All walk-on passengers will be disembarking from the rear of the vessel. Thank you.
Alright, trip's almost over. I'm still having, want to get a nice dinner somewhere in town. Yeah, the only way out of Port Jefferson is up, as you can see. Get to Belterre to the east, get to Port Jeff Station to the south, get to Stony Brook, Seatorka to the west. I've ridden my bicycle up on some of these roads. Rugged. I was much younger then. I'm not doing it today, at age 67. Maybe I'll go down the hill, but I'm sure my brakes would disintegrate if I did. Preparing to dock. Well, they still get some heavy-duty traffic here. Notice the tug and barge. Get a great view of the dockings of this vessel from that dock over there. Just about there now. turning way for the pedestrian passengers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Going ashore, going ashore. Mission accomplished. Wonderful voyages and a great day of rail fanning. And this is the delightful heart of Port Jefferson. Route 25A and 112. 112 ends here going south to Patchogue, but 25A continues east to just west of Riverhead a little ways. Friday night in the summertime at Port Jeff. This is what it's all about. We're looking south on Route 112/25A. 25A actually goes east. But if you walk that direction up the hill for about 2 miles, it'll take you to the Long Island Railroad Station in Port Jefferson, which is the end of the line on the Port Jeff branch. The railroad station is actually in the village of Port Jefferson Station. That's a totally different zip code. But this is the best part of Port Jeff.